the genes of mankind? Who are those who try to separate and segregate the human race based on genetics and eugenics and racial hygiene? Who were the original ones? We see only the Nazis. They're a modern rendition of this ancient problem. They were Satanists who practiced black magic, says Trevor Ravenscroft, author of The Spear of Destiny. This means that they were solely concerned with raising their consciousness by means of rituals to awareness of evil and non-human intelligences in the universe, and with achieving means of communication with these intelligences. Now, closer to home, when the tomb of Yale University, that's the tomb of the Skull and Bones secret fraternity, was raided by Christian students, the decor was almost purely Nazi in nature. Maltese crosses, swastikas, and so on were found therein. And the number 322, which is the lodge of the Skull and Bones Society, is actually the German lodge number of this fraternity. It is controlled by German secret societies such as the Illuminati and the OTO and the Thule. And Joel Bakan, in his fine book, The Corporation, says, in its July 1934 issue, Fortune magazine extolled the virtues of fascism and the economic miracles wrought by Mussolini. Lord Goldsborough, the man who produced the issue, wrote, the good journalist must recognize in fascism certain ancient virtues of the race, whether or not they happen to be fashionable in his own country. So there we have it, ties between modern American industrialists and politicians and ancient societies and German occultists. Now, have we been told all along that the ritual sacrifices have been going on? Let's look at the etymology. We've been told that there's a nuclear war. We've been told that there's an atomic war. What do these words actually refer to? What does the word nuclear or nucleus actually refer to? What does the word atomic actually refer to? Does it really refer to reds under the beds and SDI and bombs dropping at you from the skies? Or is it something much closer to home, something slightly more biological, something more of a Cold War, one that would never heat up at all? And what are the Star Wars? And now that the ritual centers have been designed and built, and now that the masses of the population live in the cities of the world, the next stage is easy. All the unrest, all the slaughter, all the mayhem, all the bloodletting, from the Holocaust to the assassinations. We have in Ireland, for instance, tremendous unrest there, constant unrest in Palestine, in Guyana, in Waco, in Heaven's Gate, in Columbine school disaster, in Oklahoma city bombing, or the Twin Towers or the Gulf War. All these traumas visited upon members of the human race. In Waco, the great comedian Bill Hicks said, if child molestation is actually your concern, then how come we don't see Bradley tanks knocking down Catholic churches? Now, since the Second World War, the U.S. has bombed 250 countries. That's actually since 1948, which was the time of the creation of the United Nations. Anthony J. Hilder of Radio Free World says there have been more wars since the creation of the United Nations in 1948 than from the beginning of time up until 1948. Now, who are the United Nations, and were they really created to instigate peace in the world anyway? Well, their history is that they were previously called the League of Nations, and they came into existence through Roosevelt's Bretton Woods Agreement. But before they were called the League of Nations, they were called the League to Enforce the Peace. Previous to that, they were called the American Society for the Judicial Settlement of International Disputes. Now, this society was created in 1920 by Theodore Marburg, and its first chairman was William Howard Taft of the Skull and Bones Society. Secretaries of War of the U.S. are commonly Skull and Bones members right up to the modern day. And Geneva is home to the League of Nations and to the Bilderberger Group. Concerning the slaughter and mayhem, Count Leo Tolstoy, the great author, said that government is an association of men who do violence to the rest of us. How right he is. And Manly Palmer Hall, one of America's greatest and most beloved occultists, also a 33rd degree Mason, puts it this way: to repress rebellion is to maintain the status quo, a condition which binds the mortal creature in a state of intellectual or physical slavery. But it is impossible to chain man merely by slaving his body. The mind must also be held, and to accomplish this, fear is the accepted weapon. The common man must fear life, fear death, fear God, and fear devil, and fear most his overlords, the keepers of his destiny. So it goes for urban life. And now Aldous Huxley, in his book The Final Revolution, one of the people very much into control of the masses, writes, there will be, in the next generation or so, a pharmacological method of making people love their servitude and producing dictatorships without tears, so to speak. Producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies so that people will in fact have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it, because they will be distracted from any desire to rebel by propaganda, brainwashing, or brainwashing enhanced by pharmacological methods. And this seems to be the final revolution. That's right. As the Nazis had a final solution for their victims, so these thinkers and potentates and politicians, they're working on the final solution for the rest of us. But we're going to enjoy it, of course. Now, one of the major occultists in Europe was called Count Cagliostro, and he was one of the individuals also working on the Stargate problem. His real name was Giuseppe Balsamo, and he was a ruthless and a very enigmatic character. And being a Freemason, he actually invented one of Freemasonry's rites. It's called Cagliostro's Egyptian rite. But this involved a virginal boy or girl as an oracle, or even as a priest. And these virgins were known in Masonic circles as the Columb, or the doves. So here we have Cagliostro's Egyptian rite, a rite that involves virginal boys or girls in the form of the priest or the oracle. But they're known by the name the doves. And the Spanish for that is Columb. So anybody remember Columbine High School and the sacrifice of the young children there? Were they oracles too, in some sort of Masonic rite? We have Applewhite and the priesthood of Saturn. Saturnian symbolism is also very prevalent in Freemasonry. And this particular Heaven's Gate cult, the very word Heaven's Gate, we already looked earlier at Saturn and the gate of the south, which is a correspondence of death. And the fact that they wore black attire and the Nike logo. The Nike logo is actually the corner of the rings of Saturn. And the fact that the men in Heaven's Gate were castrated. Anyone who studied ancient mythology knows that Saturn and the sickle of Saturn and the castration of his father Uranus, all of these symbols coming out of the ancient world. Now, large doses of fear, trepidation, and agony were released during the 9/11 episode, not only from New York, but all over the world. This event was staged at the site of a powerful vortex or synchronic line. So yes, as part of the great rituals and traumas, we're not going to have just one event. We're going to have assassinations, we're going to have murders, we're going to have rapes and serial crimes. We're going to have Zodiac killers and Green River killers and night stalkers and all kinds of disaster. We're going to have children burned up with CS gas at Waco and all other manner of atrocities that one could possibly think of, that the human mind in its depravity could come up with. 9/11 is just one of those events. But any of these events, if they're situated at the right place and at the right time, create waves that permeate into the earth grid and permeate the lives of individuals. That's what cities were originally designed for. There's nothing natural about a city. There's nothing natural about living in one. Assassinations like that of Diana, the moon goddess, on August 31st. And August 31st is the period when the constellation known as Virgo descends beneath the horizon. So the Virgin descending beneath the horizon signifies the time of sacrifice. In fact, August 31st, 100 years prior, was when Jack the Ripper killed his first virgin or his first whore. Another ritual sacrifice. November 22nd, 1963. At Sagittarius, the point of Sagittarius, the famous 13th sign of the zodiac, is the assassination of John F. Kennedy at the junction of 3 roads on November 22nd. That's 11 for November and 22 for the day. That's 33. He was also shot at the 33rd meridian of the Earth at the junction of 3 roads. And he was murdered at the period between the signs of Sagittarius and Scorpio. And this is known as the 13th sign of the zodiac. Only those who study the occult, esoteric form of astrology know this, the famous 13th sign of the zodiac. And the secret society, or the secret bodyguard, the secret police of meant to be protecting John F. K. referred to him by the code name the Traveler. But in fact, that's an ancient mythological name. Exactly at the point when the sun god descends into the underworld, he was known in all ancient times as the Traveler. Speaking of this kind of geometry, Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval write, the geographical latitude of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount lies between the 31st and 32nd degree parallels, with the latter passing just south of the Holy City. It has also been remarked that the Mother Lodge of the Scottish Rite Supreme Council of the 33rd degree was located in the city of Charleston in South Carolina, probably because the 33rd degree parallel passes right through it. So even though it may seem strange, even preposterous to us, these secret societies pay attention not only to sidereal time, not only the calendar dates, not only the movement of the luminaries and the stars, but also to the degrees of longitude and latitude of the Earth, from the dropping of the atom bomb, to assassinations here, to openings of buildings there. These sidereal times are very, very important, as the great scholars are now starting to find out. And this particular thing about the 33rd meridian, why are so many of the world's banks, why are so many of the world's wars, why are so many of the stately homes of the world, and specifically the banks, are situated on the 30th, between the 30th and 33rd parallel of the Earth. But we have wars, and we have rumors of wars, and we have endless anxiety. Large doses of fear and confusion make excellent business, especially for the pharmaceutical monopolies. Consumption of antidepressants rose dramatically after the attack on the World Trade Center. As Emperor Caligula is meant to have said, let them hate us as long as they fear us. Fear, of course, as Huxley and as Manly Palmer Hall are saying, is the best way to control. Since love and fear can hardly exist together, says Machiavelli, and if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. So this is the kind of mentality in these new Atlanteans, the ones who seek to control us and keep us roped in, dumbed down, ignorant, impoverished, not to be made privy to what the masters are doing behind the scenes, behind the veil of government and national security. Now, F.T. Marinetti is a great study when it comes to studying mania. The founder of the Italian Futurism and a lifelong fascist, he was also one of the most influential personages in the history of modern art. In his Futurist Manifesto of 1909, he says, war is beautiful because it initiates the dreamt-of metallization of the human body. War is beautiful because it enriches a flowering meadow with fiery orchids of machine guns. War is beautiful because it combines the gunfire, the cannonades, the ceasefire, the scents, and the stench of putrefaction into a symphony. We will glorify war, the world's only hygiene. Militarism, patriotism, the destructive gesture of freedom, brings beautiful ideas worth dying for, and scorn for women. We will destroy the museums, libraries, academies of every kind. We will fight moralism, feminism, every opportunistic or utilitarian cowardice. Makes one think of the movie Dr. Strangelove, this kind of mania loose in the world. Not some psychotic, though. Not somebody who's been locked up in a, asylum somewhere. These are the top thinkers of the world. People whose thoughts and manifestos change how we think and act. Herman